Is true friendship a cornerstone of emotional well-being? Friendships that offer support, belonging, and a genuine connection. And if so, why are so many blokes in Australia, and in fact around the world, quietly battling loneliness and isolation? How do male friendships change over time? And what does it take to move past that surface level banter and build friendships that matter? You are invited to join Ryan and I in conversation as we unpack the power of authentic male friendships. Welcome to Man Talk, a podcast of real conversations about life, your life, our life, the emotional well-being of men. My name is Howard Todd-Collins. I'm the Director of Men and Relationships Counselling, a private counselling practice here in sunny Melbourne, Australia. Thank you for being here. Sit back and relax and join me and my very good friend Ryan for this latest episode of Man Talk. Today, we're talking about friendship and men. I did a bit of research on what Beyond Blue has been talking about in terms of the statistics for blokes around friendship. According to Beyond Blue, 25% of Aussie blokes have nobody outside of their family or their partner that they can call upon or rely upon. And in the same research, some of the men who do have lots of friends, 97% agree that having mates is a good thing. It's essential. And out of that, 87% of men in that context struggle to actually make the time to catch up with mates. And it's a theme that comes up in my conversations with men about feeling isolated and lonely and realizing that maybe their priorities of making friendships or staying connected with mates somehow gets dismissed or pushed down the priority list. And it leads to all sorts of problems for blokes, the isolation of men, depression, anxiety, and so on. That's part of the research. But I guess in some way, I wonder a bit about what is it about men and friendships that you know about in your life that are useful for us to be thinking about and feeling our way through in the conversation today. What do you reckon?
I mainly just know about my experience.
Yeah.
And that is, I seem to have experienced like seasons of friendships as I've gone through different stages of my life. So when I reflect back, when I was a young kid, my friends were like part of the social group that my parents had, that we gathered together for barbecues and there'd be other kids my age and that kind of thing. And they were just part of my world. And I just didn't really question it, but they were my friends. Yeah. And then once I went to school, then that kind of created a whole new thing because we were put together in a group every day. You turn up and you see the same people.
Yeah.
And you'd form bonds. I would form bonds and over time go through things together. Challenges, fun, sport, and that would really bond us together. And there's something about the friendships that you create at school or that I created at school, which were really deep and lasting. Like I really felt kind of like almost like a brotherhood. There was something deep bonding us.
Yeah.
And then also I think because we were at the same school, there was like a shared culture and values.
Right, yes.
And then what I found as time has passed is that what's brought you together doesn't last forever in most cases.
Yeah.
Move to a new place, a new country, a new career, all that kind of thing. And then often a lot of those friendships will fall away. And some I've carried since school, but most of them have just passed or they've run their course. Like the thing that brought us together just was no longer really there anymore. And so for me, I've experienced like lots of stages of friendship during different times.
Yeah.
And like sometimes there's other things that have brought me together, like when we've had young kids, then we've connected with other people who've had kids at a similar age.
So you met other fathers or parents and so on. Yes.
Yeah. There's something that's just brought us together. And then often over time, those have run their course. So for me, I've had lots of different friends and friendships over the years. And I think part of the challenge is I found that maintaining them, maintaining a sense of connection and intimacy, and then evolving them as my life has changed.
You describe a kind of tapestry over a lifetime, which I think certainly resonates with me when I think about my early experience of school. Very similarly, somehow it was tailor-made, whether it would be cultural stuff or sport-related stuff for a long time. I actually do remember growing up with the more friends you had, the more popular you were. And I think over time, that's not necessarily always true. It's nice to be part of a tribe and a community of people. But over time, I realized this once I got to high school and beyond, that people just dropped away. And I dropped away from certain kinds of people. And the true friendship that has been everlasting for me in my background of people from the UK that I grew up with, I came to Australia 30 years ago now, left a lot of friends behind. Those are the people that I stay in contact with across various time zones. And somehow that history and that connection remains, even though we've all got older and wiser. But something about those people take me back to just a real sense of as if we've always been talking forever, even though we've spent years and years apart. I've got older, a bit more choosy about the kind of people that I meet, in a way. I'm not as involved in large tribes of communities anymore. In my career, I've also lost people in terms of work colleagues. Now I'm working on my own. As I get older, what does it mean for me to maintain kind of authentic connections, not just historical, reminiscent memories of people? I don't know if that makes sense.
It definitely does make sense. There's something about, I feel like when I was younger, and growing and developing, trying new things, going up against challenges in high school, dealing with authority, sport, meeting girls, going to clubs. It was just like carving out this new territory, which was quite exciting to do this alongside other people. It bonded us quite strongly. And I find it's harder to create those sort of things now. I don't know if it's because as you get older, you get more involved in your career, or sometimes it just feels safer and it's easy to default to talking about work. This is what I've got planned for my holiday. And then as I'm getting older, I'm just noticing there's this tendency to talk about like injuries. So like my back's playing up, or I found I was doing this a few weeks ago. Like I was talking to someone, I found I was telling them about my knee. It's just, my knee's been giving me trouble. And it's very boring. I caught myself to say, I'm like one of those people. Of course, there's a context to talk about what you're experiencing, but sometimes it's easy to default to some kind of safe form of communication where it's like not everything has to be deep and meaningful, but there's got to be some spark of like human connection. And sometimes we maybe don't invest the energy and passion into having a genuine human connection.
So I wonder what that is, because I had a conversation with someone yesterday and he was talking about both of his parents have now passed. They were both in their 80s, I think. But he remembered, and we were talking about social friendships, and his father essentially lost all his friendships. He was 80 when he died. Had nobody apart from his wife, and then my client's mother. And my client realized that he doesn't want to turn into that part of his father where there's just no one left. Part of it through lack of effort, some of it through, and this is very general, but I know there are some men that I meet, and I was like this when I first came to Australia, where I was reliant upon my partner's friendships and social circle for me to feel connected to people. And it took me a while to find my own friendship circle. But I was also one of those blokes where I just left it to her to organize all the social stuff, all the social gatherings or the family gatherings. And I was like a bit of a passenger. My client's father died and saying he was relieved that he died first before his mother, because he wouldn't have had anybody apart from him to have any real connections with, which is really sad in a way. And I think for me, that's a sort of a bit of a gauge with realizing we have to make more of an effort to find people that we connect with. Otherwise, we'll end up lonely.
I think that's very common. And we are social creatures. That's how we have been designed and evolved. Even if you just go back to like survival, the reason why we've survived is through communities, is through connection. And we're almost hardwired that we need to have these and the thing is, I think now with modern life, you're not as reliant on people in a practical sense. Like in a practical sense, you can actually survive, you can get food, you can do work, you can do all the things you need to do to survive. Whereas I think previously, for most of human history, you actually had to all band together. You had to, whether it was to get food or to help each other get shelter, build houses, there were very good reasons why, if we weren't together in community, you actually wouldn't survive.
So what is it that stops blokes in particular from creating, initiating, being proactive in building friendships? I think instilled within us is a need to connect, and we want to be part of a community or a tribe. I think what you're saying is, and it interests me because as I've got older, I often think I actually have less tolerance for people as I've got older. I need connection, but I'm much more choosy on who I connect with. And when I think about the people in my life, and the men in my life in particular, these are conversations that I have around things like aging and dealing with parents aging, or real conversations about fathering, or conversations about mental health, or the state of the world and some of these crazy men that seem to be, I don't know, looming large in the world, some of the powerful figures that exist today. And those are the conversations that kind of really get me interested. But somehow men get a bit stuck in their own territory, I think.
You said about being less tolerant.
Yes.
And I feel like I've done the same thing, where sometimes I have had this thought process in my mind of, you need to stay connected, you need to foster friendships and that kind of thing. And then sometimes I will make that effort to try and generate something, have a coffee, and then I'll be sitting there just having not a good conversation. And I'm not saying that I'm the most amazing conversationalist or I bring all the value and that kind of thing, but I'm sitting there in this experience of actually feeling more lonely than if I was by myself, because I'm like having this experience with someone else of not connecting, of not having a genuine conversation, not having a good laugh, not having a connection, feeling human, feeling alive. It's like we're somehow going through the motions of an exchange or a friendship. And sometimes that can almost magnify my loneliness.
So you can actually still be with people, but still feel quite lonely, or at least disconnected in some way. Hello. I'm sorry for interrupting this episode. I'm just dropping by, firstly, to ask you a question. What do you think the most common complaint most men and women make about their relationship? Well, it's communication problems. You thought I was going to say sex, didn't you? Well, that is actually a close second. But so many men in particular complain that they get tongue-tied and twisted when trying to communicate or open up with their partner, and often they end up shutting down or just saying the wrong things. So what is good communication in a relationship, I hear you ask? I'm so glad that you did. Well, I've actually created a free guide, Better Conversations for Blokes. It's a quick and easy guide to improving communication in your relationship. It's got heaps of tips and tricks and skills and actual phrases that you can use right now. It's made just for you. You can get the free guide in the show notes. Finish the episode and check out the show notes and find a way of improving your communication with your partner right now.
Yeah, or if we're not, and again, I don't want it to sound as if it's got to be something so deep and meaningful, but if I'm in a situation with someone where it feels very shallow and empty, then I'll sometimes have this thought of, I would rather be alone. I just want to actually remove myself from this exchange. This is worse than being lonely.
And I'm curious, what do you do in that situation? Do you literally decide, well, it's time to stop and I'm going to go now? Or do you just tolerate this kind of incongruence that you experience with some of the friendships or some of the people you meet?
It's funny because sometimes I'll catch the experience happening. And one sort of scenario is you're sitting around, you end up talking about Trump. Trump this, Trump that.
Yeah.
It's all speculation, but it's nothing really real or human. And I can almost see it happening. And there's a part of me like, I want to just intervene and say, let's not talk about Trump. Let's tell me about you. But somehow I'm almost like frozen in having to keep the game going. Like I've almost like committed to this game of a conversation.
There's a risk there, isn't there? And in a way, part of the risk is to provide an intervention and change the subject and try and lead it to a place that has a need for you, that meets your need, to be able to say, let's stop the small talk and the bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's get real. What does it mean for a lot of the blokes that I talk to? The themes are very similar in my conversations. If it's not necessarily just purely about relationships, it's the internal mind of a bloke, of a man. And whilst obviously we're all unique and we're somewhat different, there are some very similar themes. And I often say to some of the men that I work with, this is really common. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Not that I can share my conversations with other men with you because it's confidential. But I will say to you, when you're talking about your struggle with your sense of self, if you've got an internal critic, or if you're scared of the world, but you don't want to show up in your vulnerability, so you hide it and you internalize it. These are so common, these conversations with men. And I know that you know this from your experience of being with other men and the men's groups that you're involved with as well. But I know from my experience, if we pick out all these themes that most of us think about and put it in the conversation, this sense of despair when we're worried about our well-being or our kids or our partner, or this feeling of what does life really mean as we get older? They are deep and meaningful, but they're also very common thoughts that people have that aren't being shared. So when we talk about Trump or the Middle East or
AI is another one that I get myself caught up in, then halfway through I'm thinking, we're treading water here.
Yeah.
Like it was okay for a little while, but how do we get out of this now?
But when you ask the question of a bloke, are you okay? And most blokes will say, yeah, I'm fine. Where it doesn't go any further. I don't know. I think maybe you're talking about something about friendships or the way of building connections, which is more than just a surface level. Tell me what it is that you're feeling about your life right now. How happy are you? And when you're happy, what does it mean to be happy? Or when you're struggling with your kids, tell me more about how do you deal with a kid who is not listening to you? What does disrespect look like for you as a father? Now, they're not just therapy conversations. They can be, but they're more kind of meaningful discussions that make me feel I'm connected to somebody.
Yeah. Just having a good chat about something that matters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be serious. It can be something fun as well.
Yes.
You could be talking about football, or you could be talking about something really personal, but you're actually connecting and it just feels good.
So you can dance between the deep and meaningful and the fun and all the surface level and the depth level. So you can actually dance between in a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
So I wonder what it is that stops men from doing that. Because I get it and I hear you, and I think that's certainly my experience.
Some of the challenges that I find is sometimes it can be like partly like a fear of rejection.
Yeah.
Of putting myself out there,
yeah,
making myself vulnerable, and then not being received in the way that I'd like to.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not looking for what I'm looking for or something like that. So sometimes, especially if you've been hurt a few times, then it can feel safer in the moment to not make yourself vulnerable.
Yeah.
A few other challenges I find, and I don't know why this has become more of an issue, is ideologies become more and more of an issue. So
ideology in terms of
what someone believes politically,
right,
or things like that, which maybe because of social media, it's a lot more obvious.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, I just might not have known as much, but you get to know quite a bit about people in your circle just from them kind of popping up on Facebook and seeing what they're into and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And then there's such a divisive force now of putting people in their different tribes.
Yeah.
That I feel like that can sometimes make it harder to continue friendships if you just have a different stance on things.
Yes.
And we just seem to be in a much more argumentative, divisive time where I don't know why, it just feels much harder to hold attention and to be
Yes.
okay with someone believing one thing and you believing something completely different, but still being able to
So
coexist.
you're touching on the kind of the polarization of the world a bit,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
impacts on the way people feel about people close to them, not just the wider people shouting across
Yeah.
social media and whatever, but
Yeah.
how it infiltrates people's personal experiences or close connections with people.
It seemed to happen a lot during COVID.
COVID was
People
very
took
much
their
like that.
position, and
Yeah.
now there's this force in the Western world that's kind of, I guess you could call it anti-immigration.
Yeah.
Whatever, there's
Yeah.
different ideas and
Yeah.
ideologies and that kind of thing where people are putting themselves in different camps.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there was more connection before, or these forces just feel so much stronger of dividing into different groups and saying, oh, they're not in my tribe. That's not
Yeah.
my kind of person.
We think about how the impact of social media today is we're all lost and stuck in what is various echo chambers around various ideas. I know this from my experience of working with people who are very lost in their phones, where they lose a sense of connection with other people anyway, and they internalize the angry voices that they're listening to or the loud voices they're listening to. And somehow their elevated ideas and values become even more fanatical in some way. And I find that really disturbing because I think it drowns people out anyway. And then the question is, how do we then get rid of this external noise so we can focus our attention on something that's more, I don't know what the word is. It's not, is it authentic? It's not authentic. It's something a bit more organic than just being so influenced by the loud voices of social media or various influencers or someone ranting and raving about the polarization of, I don't know. Somehow we're so distracted by the external
meant to bring us
noise.
together, but it has the opposite effect
Almost.
a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I find it a very challenging thing to create and maintain intimacy and friendships and connections. I find for me, a lot of it is through something that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like I have lots of friends through cycling.
Yes.
But they're like cycling buddies.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that brings us together. And it's fantastic. We have fun, have a laugh, have a chat.
Yeah.
We create friendships. We do stay connected. But like a lot of things in my life, it's been mediated through that.
Okay. Yes. The common ground.
Where those friendships will just evolve or fall away as I move into something else. They often don't continue.
Yes.
So it might be, say, through my work, through filmmaking, then I'll have friends and colleagues through that.
Yeah.
And then, like I mentioned, through having young kids.
Yes.
Things that you're doing that bring you together. But how do you generate that long-term kind of deep connection where you feel like you've created there's like a kind of a brotherhood that you maintain? Like you felt that through some of the friends that I went through school with.
Yeah.
But it feels increasingly hard to maintain those kind of connections.
I wrote a blog about friendship, and the title of the blog is Blokes and Friendship is More Than Banter and a Beer. Yeah. So the banter and the beer is fine. It's what we're talking about partly, that you can have and be involved in a group of people with a certain common ground goal, whatever that is, sport, cycling, and so on. And yet, how do we get from banter to something different? I think part of it is about curiosity, asking the questions that I certainly get curious about, which are maybe a little bit more personal. They're not necessarily just deeply meaningful, but it's the curiosity of, Ryan, tell me about your experience of you being you. And I will do that with some of the men that I meet in my friendship circle. One guy I was talking to the other day about, he was saying to me, he's lost in his head a lot of the time. He's thinking lots of stuff, but doesn't always express himself or make enough effort with his friends. In fact, his friends make more of an effort with him. And he's at risk of losing, as he gets older, some of those connections that we're actually talking about.
I was just thinking, of course, it's really nice to accumulate friends, to have people that you're connected to that you can reach out to and they can reach out to you. In another way, just as importantly, is like to be friendly, which is like to be in a disposition of reaching out to the world, of wanting to know the world and people, of wanting to know how it feels like, And a lot of the time you can actually get a lot of what you need
Yeah.
just through generating experiences of intimacy and connection.
Yes.
Sure, it would be lovely to have someone that you carry with through life as a dear friend.
Yeah.
But if you can live as a friendly person, it makes me think of, I think it's this line in Hamlet when he says, "Man delights me not." It's like the worst. He's really depressed. And that's one of the worst things that can happen to you is like when humans no longer delight you. When you don't feel that spark or desire to want to reach out and be human with them and feel that energy, that's when you're really alone. Yeah, while it's nice to carry connections and friends, you can get so much just from being open.
I like that. It's a lovely line. It does remind me that, I get lost in my head as much as any man, and very much in my head and not looking outward at the people that I'm surrounded by.
Yeah.
But most people are walking with their head down or in the phone and not really looking outward. I like that idea that maybe we should look outward a lot more.
I think so. And the thing that you said right near the start of our conversation about you learn this thing when you're at school, that you are the ones who are the most successful, the ones who have the most friends. That's how you gauge how well you're going in life and all this sort of thing. And it's quite easy to carry on with that.
Yes.
And I remember conversations that I've had with my wife years ago when I've talked about, I'm feeling lonely. I wish I had more friends. I wish I was more connected to that kind of thing. And we have talked about it in different ways. But one point that she made was like, it's also about accepting who you are and how you are in the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes knowing that maybe I'm not the kind of person who has hundreds of friends.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have the patience for that or the interest in that.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a very much like a one-on-one kind of person.
Yeah.
Like I have good, deep connections.
Yeah.
But also accepting yourself and going, you know
that's
what?
Okay.
You might not actually be the sort of person who carries loads of friendships because deep down you actually don't want or need it.
Yes.
You just think that makes you a successful person.
And I think I've got much more used to my own company, which is something else that I think when I think back at my social life.
Yeah.
Early on, I thought it was important to be connected to other people. That was a sense of belonging and a sense of self. But I also began to realize I would get lost in the crowd. I wasn't always someone that was particularly social, talkative. I liked the energy of a company, but not always initiating or leaning in for a whole host of reasons.
Yeah.
And I've begun to realize that I don't need that quite as much as I did when I was growing up.
I feel a version of that because also I'm very passionate about my work and about my sport.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would find myself getting into social situations where before long, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm done. I'm ready to get back to work.
Yeah.
I want to go do something else. And I would almost judge myself for that.
I prefer my own company in general to being with lots of other people, because I lose my energy with people, with a crowd of people as well. And I've got a certain amount of tolerance for that in my own life. I sound like a grumpy old man.
I think the important point that we're getting to is like this idea of, on the one hand, connection and friendship and feeling human with other people is vital. You can't have a happy, fulfilled life without it. And then on the other side is it's easy to get swept up into empty, meaningless relationships, obligations, whatever the thing might be. Like if you're not into footy tipping, but you participate because it's bringing you together with people, but you have zero interest in, you start to find that you're doing all these things in life, or you're having social situations where you're bored or unfulfilled, then that's no good either. Where's the place in between where you can be okay with being alone? You can be okay with feeling lonely sometimes. You can be okay with not wasting your time on boring social situations. But there's this whole other part of you that cultivates deep friendships, that cultivates connection and kind of finding that space in between. That's what I would
I hear you.
try to create.
I hear you. And I think maybe in some ways to cultivate a deeper connection or friendship, it's only one or two people, really. It's not 10 people. Well, I wonder about this in terms of that statistics or the data at the beginning when we were talking a bit about loneliness for men, to maybe people listening just to think a bit about, you only need one or two men that you know that from an emotional point of view you can call upon, that you
Yeah.
can reach out to, as opposed to feeling like you have to do it all on your own. I think that's one of the most common themes that come up in my conversations with blokes who are struggling. No one else knows what it's like. No other men are going through what I'm going through. And of course that's not true, because I know it's not true because of the conversations I have with lots of blokes. They're incredibly common themes. You'd be surprised how many men do have the same thoughts and feelings and needs, just to connect and be heard and to challenge each other a bit around the depth of intimacy from male to male, especially as we get older, as we learn a lot more about our lives as well.
I think that's very well said. And I think that therapy is a great way of practicing intimacy. Intimacy is just human relationship, but it's quite a nice way to just practice relating
Yeah.
in a space that's safe,
Yes.
where you can say whatever. There's no consequences. You're not going to be rejected.
There's no judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can just have that experience of practicing having a real conversation,
Yeah.
practicing taking a little bit of a risk,
Yes.
trying out parts of yourself that you sometimes don't,
Yeah.
and then bring that into the world in your relationships.
I think that's really good advice and probably a really good place to finish.
Yeah.
I appreciate the time. And would you be my friend?
Definitely. You got a friend in me.
Let's sing. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Howard.
Thank you.